So what did Jesus mean by claiming to be the Lord of the Sabbath in Matthew 12? There was a dispute there because the disciples of Jesus were hungry and were picking grains of corn. And the Pharisees, who were tremendous critics, by the way, they criticized everything in a very legalistic way. They said, you can't do that. Your disciples are doing what's not permitted on the Sabbath. So what did Jesus say? You're right. The Sabbath, we don't have to work. No. Jesus is himself bringing in the new covenant. Jesus, I must repeat, is a new covenant teacher. That doesn't mean to say he changed everything in one day, but gradually, by various examples, he showed that he came to fulfill the law, to give it fullest possible meaning, sometimes actually changing it. And so Jesus here said, or let's read verse 3. He said to them, haven't you read? He takes them back to the Bible. That's a good approach. Haven't you read in the Bible what David did when he got hungry? Even in the Old Testament days, he and his friends, his companions. Haven't you read how he entered the house of God and they ate the consecrated bread? That was strictly illegal. The Bible said you couldn't eat that bread unless you were a priest. Well, guess what? David and his disciples did it, and Jesus said that was okay. So how was David able to do that? He repeats this point in verse 5. Haven't you read in the law that on the Sabbath, notice on a Saturday, the priests in the temple break the Sabbath. They violate the Sabbath. Wow. And yet they're innocent. So what Jesus is very cleverly doing here is showing there is a class of people, even in the Old Testament, who are free to break the strict rules of the Sabbath. And then Jesus says, how much greater am I, Jesus, because I am greater than the temple. There it is in verse 8. Wonderful. What a marvelously grandiose but supremely true statement. If you had known what this means, I desire compassion. So there's the point of his argument. If you really would think in a gentle, compassionate way, and if you realize that I am greater than the temple, then you wouldn't have condemned the innocent. So the overall lesson here is do not judge wrongly. You as a Christian are in training to judge the world, that's to say to rule the world, and God doesn't want you ruling the world if you're going to be horribly cruel and judgmental in the wrong sense. So Jesus simply quotes the Old Testament, and he says that he, Jesus, is the Lord of the Sabbath. He can tell us what to do with the Sabbath. Moses is in the past, and Jesus is the one we listen to in the New Covenant. So they broke the Sabbath even in the Old Testament as a type, as an example, if you like, of what was coming in the New, and there it is. So isn't that wonderful? Jesus is full of compassion. He's not the strict, legalistic, critical person as the Pharisees were. And so it was perfectly right for them to break the Sabbath. They were hungry and they broke the Sabbath. Jesus can tell us what to do on the Sabbath day. It's true that God spoke of the seventh day in Genesis. He actually didn't institute the Sabbath day in Genesis. That came later. But he spoke of the seventh day, didn't make it into a rest day until much later. And now here, Jesus, as the Lord of the new covenant, is able to dispose of the Sabbath in a unique way and do what he wants with it, namely, he's Lord of it. So you don't have to keep the Sabbath day today. If you do, you're saying, I want to be under the old covenant. The Sabbath day, as a day of rest, the seventh day, is the sign, now listen carefully, to the old covenant, the sign of the old covenant. So if you want to tell God and the whole world that you're really keen on getting things right, why are you claiming then to be full of the sign of the old covenant? That's wrong. The new covenant does not require you to rest on the seventh day.
You could only say that God was greater than the temple. You know, within Judaism, there's only one individual who is greater than the temple. No, because the temple was the house of God.
Yes.
Was where the Shekinah, the glory, the Ark of the Covenant was kept. I mean, the Holy of Holies, etc. So to claim that you're greater than the temple, right there should tell you something about a change that has already occurred to the old covenant system represented by the Mosaic, what we call the Torah or the Law of Moses.
Yes.
And another thing in the Mark story, because as you know, the Gospels present different views. They
Yes.
some give us other information that the other doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Markan story, he adds Mark here, as you can see in verse 27.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for man or
Mm-hmm.
human,
Mm.
not meant for the Sabbath. That's why the Son of Man,
Yes.
the human being, the representative of all humanity now, Jesus,
Yes.
he's the second Adam now.
Yes.
That's why he's the Lord of the Sabbath. So could we say that here in Mark's version,
Yeah.
when he says that the Sabbath was made for us, for human beings,
Mm-hmm.
aren't we now, in essence, also lords of the Sabbath? And by that, by the
Yeah.
word Lord, we mean we can either keep the Sabbath if you want
Mm.
to, or if you don't want to.
That would certainly be included if you take the rest of the information on the Sabbath in the New Covenant writings. Obviously, obligatory Sabbath keeping is wrong. Nobody must tell you to observe Saturday as the Sabbath. That's the wrong covenant. That's quite clear. So, yes, in a sense, then we've been given that same authority shared with us by Jesus, who, as you rightly said, makes a stupendous claim when he says that he, Jesus, is greater than the temple. That is a tremendously high grade of claim, isn't it? He's uniquely God's spokesman. He's not God himself, of course, because there's only one God. We've got more questions on that tonight. But he's got the power and authority to dispose of the old covenant Sabbath in a brand new way. And the point here is compassion. He goes on to say, if you've got a sheep that falls in a ditch on the Saturday, you're going to just let it sit there, not do any work? Of course not. So the greater lesson here is get to the heart of the issue, exercise compassion, and don't be so fearfully bound by the letter, especially of the old covenant, which is regular obligatory Sabbath keeping, not binding on us now.
Yes, it's about compassion. It's about mercy
Yeah,
overriding
yep,
certain old covenant laws,
exactly.
but also it's about authority. I mean, this
Yes,
story in Matthew 12, as Matthew tells it,
yeah,
is about Jesus saying, well, you know what? My followers can't break the Sabbath,
yep,
yet are innocent
yep,
because they're under my laws now. They're not
that's
under
right.
the old covenant laws. They're under the laws of the Messiah, me,
Yep,
the Son of Man.
all right.
So it's interesting because it's about authority. It's about not Jesus himself,
Hmm.
where in other places, as we know, he's charged with breaking the Sabbath.
Yes,
For example, in John 5:17, Jesus explicitly says,
yep,
my Father works the Sabbath. I also work the Sabbath,
yeah,
basically, paraphrasing Jesus.
yep,
But what's interesting
outrageous.
to me, what's captivating to me about this story in Matthew 12 is that we are now invested with that same
Yep,
authority of the Messiah himself. Can you
that's right.
imagine what great honor that is?